There are currently 12,512 nuclear warheads on this planet. Enough to end every city, every coastline, every civilization we have ever built, not once, not twice, but 14 times over. Most of you watching this believe the nuclear threat ended in 1991, when the Soviet flag came down over the Kremlin and the Cold War was declared over. That is exactly what the architects of the new arms race are counting on. In the last 36 months, 3 separate nuclear agreements have collapsed, 2 new nations have crossed uranium enrichment thresholds, and the United States has quietly allocated $1.7 trillion. That is trillion with a T, to modernize its entire nuclear arsenal. So why is almost nobody in mainstream media connecting these dots? Because the real driver of this new arms race is not what you think. It is not ideology. It is not geopolitics, and it is not even Iran or North Korea. Stay with me, because by the end of this briefing, I am going to show you the one hidden player that is quietly reshaping the entire global nuclear order. And its name will surprise you. Start with the United States. America's nuclear arsenal currently holds approximately 3,700 warheads. The Congressional Budget Office estimated in 2025 that the operation and modernization of U.S. nuclear forces could total over $95 billion per year. Per year, that is not a lifetime budget. That is an annual bill larger than the entire defense budgets of most nations on Earth. What is that money building? 3 entirely new systems simultaneously. The B-21 Raider, a next-generation stealth nuclear bomber designed to penetrate any air defense system on Earth. The Sentinel ICBM replacing the 50-year-old Minuteman III missiles sitting in underground silos across the American heartland. And the Columbia-class submarine, the most expensive weapons program in U.S. military history, each vessel carrying enough firepower to destroy an entire continent. But here is where it gets complicated. Most U.S. hypersonic weapons, in contrast to those in Russia and China, are not being designed for use with a nuclear warhead. America is building conventional hypersonic missiles. Russia and China are building nuclear ones. That gap in design philosophy creates a dangerous asymmetry, because a nuclear-armed hypersonic missile does not need to be accurate. It just needs to arrive. Russia entered this decade with one strategic priority above all others: make weapons that cannot be stopped, and they have largely succeeded. The Russian Avangard hypersonic glide vehicle reaches speeds of Mach 27, rendering interception nearly impossible for existing missile defense systems. Its ability to perform sharp evasive maneuvers during its descent phase presents a significant challenge to traditional defense mechanisms. Then in August 2025, Vladimir Putin announced something that alarmed every NATO defense minister simultaneously. Putin announced that the Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missile had entered full production and would be deployed in Belarus. Belarus, not Russia. Belarus, sitting on the eastern border of Poland, 600 kilometers from Berlin. Russia is expected to manufacture close to 2,500 high-precision missiles in 2025, spanning cruise, ballistic, and hypersonic classes. That is not a weapons program. That is an industrial production line running at wartime speed, during peacetime. And while Russia modernizes its strike capability, Russia maintains 1,718 strategic warheads deployed, with 870 on intercontinental ballistic missiles, 640 on submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and over 200 at heavy bomber bases, and could theoretically upload hundreds more warheads onto its deployed delivery systems, potentially increasing its deployed nuclear arsenal by up to 60%. 60% in a crisis. In days. If Russia is the most immediately dangerous nuclear power, China is the most strategically alarming. Because China is not just modernizing, China is transforming. China held its nuclear stockpile steady at around 200 warheads since the 1970s. Now it contains more than 600 nuclear warheads and is projected to exceed 1,000 by 2030. China is moving from a land-based force to a full land, air-sea nuclear triad. By January 2025, China had completed or was close to completing around 350 new ICBM silos in 3 large desert fields in the north of the country and 3 mountainous areas in the east. 350 new missile silos built in secret, in the desert discovered only through commercial satellite imagery. At the September 2025 parade, Xi Jinping unveiled the DF-61, China's newest ICBM. The goal, according to Chinese defense analysts, was to showcase the fast advancement of China's strategic capability, and China has conducted up to 20 times as many hypersonic missile tests as the United States. China also has a robust hypersonic program and is investing in underground facilities to protect its arsenal from a first strike. The message from Beijing is deliberate and unmistakable. We are no longer the smallest nuclear power at the table. We intend to be equal to Russia and America, and we intend to get there by 2030. To understand why this modernization race is so dangerous, you need to understand what hypersonic missiles actually change. And the answer is, everything. A traditional ballistic missile follows a predictable arc, up into space, then back down. Radar systems track it from the moment it launches. A president has roughly 28 minutes to decide what to do. That window, brutal as it sounds, enabled 70 years of deterrence. It gave decision makers time to confirm, verify and choose. A hypersonic glide vehicle travels at speeds between Mach 5 and Mach 27. It flies low, inside the atmosphere. It maneuvers. It does not follow a predictable path. Current U.S. radar and satellite systems were not designed to track it. That 28-minute window collapses to potentially under 11 minutes. In a real crisis, a U.S. president might have less time to make the most consequential decision in human history than it takes to get a briefing from the Secretary of Defense. A study by former senior U.S. defense and nuclear officials assessed Russia's Kinzhal, Turkon, and Avangard systems along with China's DF-17 and DF-26, concluding that the current gap in high-speed and hypersonic capability is significant and growing rapidly. The Air Force has revived its launched rapid response weapon after shelving the program following test setbacks, requesting roughly $387 million in fiscal 2026 to begin procurement. The Missile Defense Agency awarded roughly $475 million to Northrop Grumman to accelerate development of the Glide Phase Interceptor, designed to destroy hypersonic weapons mid-flight, with initial operational capability now expected in the early 2030s. The early 2030s, Russia and China are deploying hypersonic nuclear missiles now. America's defense against them is nearly a decade away. Now we come to the country at the center of the most volatile nuclear situation on Earth right now. A country that officially does not have nuclear weapons. A country that has never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. A country that, according to every credible intelligence assessment on the planet, possesses approximately 90 nuclear warheads, deliverable by land, based Jericho III ballistic missiles, by Dolphin-class submarines in the Mediterranean, and by F-35I fighter jets. That country is Israel. Israel, which does not publicly acknowledge possessing nuclear weapons, is also believed to be modernizing its nuclear arsenal. In 2024, it conducted a test of a missile propulsion system that could be related to its Jericho family of nuclear-capable ballistic missiles. Israel also appears to be upgrading its plutonium production reactor site at Dimona. And Israel has a doctrine. It is called the Samson Option, named after the biblical figure who pulled down the temple on himself and his enemies rather than face defeat. The Samson Option doctrine suggests that if Israel's existence is threatened, or its conventional defenses fail against a massive overwhelming attack, it would use its nuclear arsenal rather than face destruction, taking its enemies with it. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is an openly discussed strategic doctrine. Historical accounts show nuclear alerts were considered in 1967 and 1973, under far less desperate conditions than a hypothetical total collapse. During the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when Egyptian and Syrian forces nearly broke through Israeli lines, Prime Minister Golda Meir reportedly ordered 13 nuclear weapons readied. Massive U.S. airlifts of conventional weapons followed within hours. Every time the phrase Samson Option appears in headlines amid fresh fighting, as it has repeatedly in 2025 and 2026 coverage of Israel-Iran tensions, it reminds other powers that one state has already mentally rehearsed crossing the nuclear line. That rehearsal itself erodes deterrence norms. Iran accelerates its own enrichment. Saudi Arabia and Turkey quietly explore their options. The Non-Proliferation Treaty phrase further. Here is the thing. Nobody wants to say out loud. Every country in this briefing will tell you they are modernizing their nuclear weapons for defense, for deterrence, to prevent war. And they might even believe it. But look at what is actually being built. Weapons that travel at Mach 27. Weapons that maneuver in flight. Weapons that compress a president's decision time to under 11 minutes. Weapons that can be launched from submarines nobody can find, from silos nobody knew existed, from stealth bombers that do not appear on radar. These are not defensive weapons. These are first strike weapons. Weapons designed to move so fast and so unpredictably that the other side cannot respond in time. All 9 nuclear-armed states continued to strengthen their nuclear arsenals in 2024, and some deployed new nuclear-armed or nuclear-capable weapon systems during the year. All 9. Not one nation stepped back. Not one paused. Every single nuclear power on Earth simultaneously decided that now was the time to upgrade. And for the first time in over 50 years, there are no agreed limits on the development or deployment of strategic nuclear weapons between the US and Russia, after New START expired in February 2026 with no replacement in sight. No ceiling, no floor, no rules. There is 3 scenarios to make you understand. Scenario A: best case. The 2026 NPT Review Conference produces a breakthrough. The US-Russia, and for the first time China agree to a trilateral framework capping warhead counts and banning hypersonic nuclear delivery systems. A genuine arms control architecture for the modern era. Unlikely, but not impossible. Scenario B: worst case. The hypersonic gap widens. China reaches 1,000 warheads by 2030 as projected. The US responds by uploading reserve warheads back onto deployed missiles. Something it legally can do the moment it chooses to. Russia matches. Israel's Samson Option Doctrine, activated during a future Middle East escalation, shatters the 80-year global taboo against nuclear use. The world enters territory it has never navigated before. Scenario C: most likely. The modernization race continues under the polite name of deterrence. No nuclear weapon is used. But the weapons get faster, more accurate, and harder to stop every single year. The decision windows get shorter. The margins for miscalculation get thinner. And the world holds its breath. Not because leaders want war, but because the systems they are building leave less and less room for human judgment to prevent one. Every weapon in this briefing was built by engineers who are brilliant, by generals who are serious, and by governments that genuinely believe they are making their countries safer. They may even be right individually. Each nation building a faster missile makes itself slightly more secure against the others, but collectively, all of them doing it simultaneously, with no agreements, no inspectors, no treaties, and no hotline capable of managing a crisis measured in minutes rather than hours. Collectively, they are building a world where the margin between deterrence and catastrophe is measured not in days or years but in seconds. So I leave you with this. We have built weapons that move faster than our ability to think about them. We have built systems that compress human judgment into a window too small for wisdom to fit. And we have done all of it while calling it peace. What exactly are we at peace from? If you want to understand the mineral supply chain that gives China leverage over every single weapon system in this briefing, including America's own, click the briefing on China's rare earth monopoly right now. It is the hidden foundation underneath everything you just watched. Share this if it gave you something the networks did not. Subscribe, and tell me in the comments, which country in this briefing concerns you most, and why.